Hey, good morning. Happy holidays. It's Juneteenth. Did you know that the first people who were stolen from Africa and trafficked to British colonial America were indentured servants? True story. They were given a set period of time to work off their debt, and after that debt was completed, they would be given land. This all started on August 20th, 1619, when 20 Angolans first arrived at Port Comfort. Two of those Africans were Antonio and Isabella, who got their names from the Portuguese who had been enslaving and trafficking Africans since the 1440s. Now, they were known as servants of Captain William Turner, not property, but servants. And in 1623, they gave birth to their son named William Turner, the first African born in British colonial America. And get this, he was born a free man. And that's the way things worked in British colonial America until around 1627 or 28, when the British were like, if all of these Africans are going to get their freedoms, then we're not going to have anyone here to work our fields, and we're not going to make any money in the process. So they forced Africans to work past the end of their contracts. Their punishment for having the audacity to complete their servitude was a lifetime of enslavement. And that's how things were in British colonies. Your punishment for being black or dark-skinned was enslavement, be it in the Americas, South Africa, Australia, or beyond. Wherever you were, if you were a dark-skinned person, your punishment was enslavement. Now, a lifetime of enslavement became legal in the 1640s with the conviction of John Punch. John Punch was an Angolan who was captured and trafficked to the Americas and was bought by Hugh Gwynn. Hugh Gwynn also had white indentured servants, and in 1640, John Punch and a couple of his white indentured servants ran away from Hugh Gwynn's enslavement. They were later captured and brought back. The white indentured servants had 4 years tacked on to the end of their sentence, while John Punch, the African, was given a lifetime of enslavement as his punishment. Now, that was the first time in British colonial America that anyone had been sentenced to a lifetime of enslavement. That case also set up a distinction between Africans and Europeans. Fast forward 10 years and we meet a man named John Castor, an African who's enslaved by another African named Anthony Johnson. Now, John Castor realized that his period of servitude was over a couple years ago, so he sued for his freedom and lost. And he became the second person sentenced to a lifetime of enslavement, even though he did nothing wrong. And that case proved that enslavement was a punishment for Africans who had the audacity to complete their period of servitude. In the 1600s and 1700s, white people created the concept of race and invented racism as justification for their mistreatment of non-white peoples the world over. Now, this gave white people a superiority complex, and in the 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s, they invented scientific racism to prove whites' superiority disorder. And this disorder caused a war between the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. You see, the Confederate States of America wanted to maintain slavery as their way of life. They built their whole way of living around slavery, and they wanted to fight for the right to enslave black people for eternity, while the North was like, nah, you can't do that. Even though we benefit from your particular brand of enslavement, we don't think it's right for you to enslave people for life. And they went to war behind it, and the Confederacy lost. So in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, effectively ending chattel slavery within the United States. But when the people of Texas got the memo, they didn't care about the abolishment of slavery. They kept the practice going for a full 2 years. So on June 19th, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger marched into Galveston, Texas, and declared that all enslaved people are free, which put an end to slavery as punishment for simply being black. You see, the 13th Amendment ended slavery as a way of life in America, but it kept enslavement as a punishment for anyone who's been duly convicted of a crime. And what were the crimes of the day? Well, vagrancy and loitering. What's a vagrant? A vagrant is a person who has neither home, nor job, nor means to support themselves. And who were the vagrants of the day? Newly freed Africans who had neither plantation to work on or live on. So what's loitering? Loitering is standing around a business idly without purpose. And who were the loiterers of the day? Newly freed Africans who were standing around businesses looking for work. And overnight, the prison population went from 95% white to 95% black. And it did that in part because you couldn't arrest someone's property. After we were no longer considered property, our crimes were being free and looking for work. And we were arrested en masse. And after we were arrested and convicted, we were then leased back to the plantations from which we were just freed. And that's how Juneteenth, the prison industrial complex, and convict leasing became today's moment in white history.